Oh, right. Okay. We've just been laughing about how poorly this is going to go, but we'll see what happens. This is trade time. This is the first episode. Jordan has kindly offered to be my guinea pig to work out how to do this and try and get the ring rust off from not making any videos for ages. My name's Chaz Thompson. I run Snakes and Adders in Sheffield and have done for 22 years. But these videos aren't about my shop. These videos are about shop owners from across the country who have got interesting stories to tell. They have huge varying levels of experience within the trade. Shop owners come in all sorts of sexes, sizes, colors, creeds, and they've got a wealth of knowledge, a hugely varying amount of experience. And I want to investigate that. There's a myth that needs to be dispelled that shop owners don't have a clue what they're doing. We don't really care about the animals. We just want the profit and want to run. We want to, just mistreat you and the animals in every way possible, which just could not be further from the truth. This vein of experience needs to be mined, and I think it makes for really interesting conversations. And that's it. Without further ado, may I introduce Jordan Mangham of Peculiar Pets. Hello, Jordan.
Hi, Chaz.
You all right, love?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, getting there. A long day at work, but we'll crack on. You've been at work as well. I think that's going to be a common thread with these videos because everybody's going to be wrung out from dealing with the shop and the animals and the customers all day. But
Yeah,
that's it. That's the job, isn't it? So
yeah,
the way I want to set the video out is the first part is going to be framed with what we're going to call general shopkeeping, which is going to be the name and address of your shop. And then I want to know, are you open 7 days a week? When do you get your live foods? Dry goods delivery days, services you provide. So this is an opportunity to sort of just speak about what it is that you do before we get to talking about experiences and everything else. So I'll let you fly.
yeah. No worries. So I own Peculiar Pets Limited. We're based in Hetmondwike. Our address is 8C Market Street.
Can you remember
W.
it?
I'm like, I think it is. Pretty sure. I can type it without looking. I don't have to say it very often. Our address, give up. Our address. Our address is 8C Market Street, Hetmondwike, WF160JU. Hetmondwike's in West Yorkshire as well, in case anyone didn't know that. We're classed as Wakefield. Yeah, we're a little reptile specialist that's recently done the unthinkable and put aquatics in as well. Yeah, we do all your kind of usual dry goods, all that kind of stuff. Focusing more on kind of like up-to-date care. So it's all the kind of like new T5 technologies, all the different heating elements that you can use, thermostats, and all the kind of bog standard stuff. I am addicted to branches and rocks in a big way. So we have a massive natural decor kind of obsession going on.
No.
And all that kind of stuff. And then we do all like obviously supplements and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the same for the aquatics as well, is there's dry goods for them is a little bit different. And that has been a real learning curve this year, is sort of going, well, we don't need to stock that because no one actually buys it. It's a bit strange. And same for like we do livestock for both sides. Reptile livestock tends to be stuff I like. We do all
Yes,
kind of,
charged.
yeah. We do all kind of like your beginner stuff. So bearded dragons, leopard geckos, corn snakes, your things that you'll see around, but we try and do maybe an unusual morph of it, or we breed our own of a lot of those as well, so that we can give you a little bit more information about, say, a baby corn snake that you buy and go, this is mum, this is dad, it was born in that room there, kind of thing. With as far as like services, we do boarding. We do things like nail clipping, free health checking, and we don't charge for those. Sexing snakes, that's a common one. And it's sexing snakes is one of those services that I forget we provide because it's just, yeah, I'll sex your snake for you. But people don't always know you do it.
Yeah.
And we do, so like with the boarding, we do for any reptiles and that sort of thing. Although we do keep getting asked if we'll board guinea pigs.
Right. Okay.
Just a bit like,
Yeah.
no, not in a room full of snakes, no. So yeah, and then as far as like deliveries and stuff, through a week we tend to get our aquatic live food comes on a Wednesday,
Right.
and then the reptile, pretty much everything comes usually on a Friday.
Right.
But we're starting now, bit by bit, to get midweek deliveries of certain stuff, especially live food. If we've had a bit of a mental weekend, it's like, right, we'll top that up or whatever. But yeah, and we do pre-order service as well. So a lot of people use that as, even if it's like 3 boxes of bugs, if you know it's there in a box waiting for you, it's
So
there then.
you bag it and lay it away for people if they want.
Yeah, yeah. We started it because when we'd opened, we had some sort of like existing regulars from previous shops,
Yeah.
and they were buying bulk quantities. So they were sort of like, oh, well, will you set it aside? Because if they wanted 25 boxes of XL Locust, I'd have rather they didn't just take that off my shelf kind of thing and leave me with nothing on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, we started doing that, and it kind of took off. So now a lot of it, half the order will actually be sat in a box waiting to be collected, and then the other half was on the shelf kind of thing. So it's worked out quite well for us. And for a while we only did Vivs to order as well, and that worked-ish, but now we keep Vivs in stock just because it's easier for me.
Yeah.
Is the long and short of that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, with the live foods, I've never done the layaway stuff.
Mm.
Maybe that's something that I ought to look into because you're right. On occasion, and I mean, the thing is, they don't come every week. Every now
Mm.
and again, you will get that one customer that turns up and just goes, "Yeah, I'll have 15 boxes of this," and you're just
Yeah.
like, "Fuck." You're glad that you've got the sale, but you've
Yeah.
now been completely rinsed of whatever size they've just taken, and you're like, "Right, okay."
Definitely.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is where these interviews potentially are going to be not just interesting for the hobbyists, but they're going to be interesting for other shop owners. Where
Yeah.
you go, right,
Yeah.
clever idea. I like this. And
Yeah.
let me just get my notepad and pen and start writing stuff down. So, what got you into the hobby? And was it a job that became a passion or a passion that became a job? Which way round did it work?
Passion that became a job.
Okay.
When I was 11, I think, going on 12, my dad wanted a snake
Okay.
and convinced me that I wanted a snake, so that he could get it past my mum.
Brilliant.
So we took a little trip to this shop in Leeds. You might know it.
Maybe try me.
And yeah, I don't think you owned it the first time we went in. I don't think.
No.
And we'd nipped in, and you showed us a rosy rat snake,
Mm.
and this sort of adult female. She's about 3.5 foot. And I remember thinking that's quite cool. That having been petrified of them
Mm.
5 minutes earlier as well. So it was like, oh yeah, fair enough. And you sort of explained like a rosy rat is essentially a corn snake and all that kind of
Mm.
thing. And it was like, all right, yeah, so corn snake seems like a good idea. And I think it was about 6 months after. I don't think we really came back after. It was like, right, well, around this time we'll look at doing it. And
Yeah.
we went and got a baby corn snake, little creamsicle,
Okay.
and which nowadays, as we all know, rarity.
Yeah.
Um, but back then, I think it was about 30 quid.
Mm.
Just like, I wish we could get creamsicles for 30 quid.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we did that with a little starter kit and all that kind of thing. And off we went. And that kind of started it. And
Mm.
then a couple of months later, I was like, I want another one because that's how it always
The
goes.
addiction is real. We tell
Yeah.
people the addiction's real all the time. They don't believe us, but they're always coming back for more. So,
Yeah. And then we came back
yeah.
and got a snow cone.
Yeah.
And they were the first two that started it all.
Mhm.
I mean, looking back, wasn't the greatest setup in the world. Like my care wasn't great, and you just think like
What
even
year are you
20 years.
talking? What year are
It's
you
like yeah, it's like 20 years,
talking?
and the difference in how we now sell, keep, advice. All I was just like it's mind blowing. Um, and then that they stayed as the only ones for about 4 years, I think.
Mhm.
And then I decided I wanted a lizard.
Right.
And again came to a shop in Leeds.
Okay.
And having nipped in, looked in all the tanks, and prodded and poked a few things, and got to know you guys and stuff. And I'd come in, and I think Matt was working,
Mhm.
and I'd seen white line geckos, so skunk geckos.
Mhm.
I was like, that's what I want. And he quite honestly turned around and went, no, you don't. I was like, no, I do. I really do. Like, that's what I want. That's the species I want. I think they're fantastic. It's like, okay.
Mhm.
No, you don't. But eventually I was like, look, I've got this setup. I know they're mental. I know this kind of thing.
Mhm.
I was very book learned, so therefore I knew everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'd read on Tint. Well, no, it's a lie. It was a book at the time.
Yeah.
That they're fast and all this kind of. I was like, yeah, cope with that.
You can work it out. It's
Yeah,
so good.
the books do not prepare you for how fast that species really is. Oh yeah, I mean, watching Matt catch it,
Yeah.
it's just like up the wall, and that started that, and then my other half just come home.
Okay. Are we ready?
Yeah,
Let me pause it so the dog don't go mad. Sorry, guys, we had to pause that. Like sod's law, you know, if it can happen, it will happen. Jordan warned me at the beginning, well, my partner might come home and the dog's probably going to go batshit crazy if he does come in. But he might, I don't think he will come home. And best laid plans. So, you know, it's wonderful. You know, we love working out the kinks in the first step.
this is it.
Just what we need.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got the palm gecko or
Yeah, and then not long after that, so around the time I got the palm gecko, you had a group of adult crested geckos in Snakes and Adders, and
they were expensive back then.
they were.
They
They
were.
lived in an arboreal wooden bib on top of where the Indian rock python was next to the
Yep.
door, and I still remember it all these years later. And I remember like being like, I'm gonna have a bit of a Google on them because I've heard of them, but don't really know anything about them. Because back then they were mentioned in books as this like mystery species that no one really knew anything about, and kind of fell in love, settled on Cresties,
Mm.
come back, got set up off you this time much better than the one that I'd done for the palm gecko. I had botched that one.
Mm.
And then got the male, and then I actually got a female from I can't think where she was from another shop. I can't remember exactly where it was.
Mm.
And then decided I'm going to breed these. And
Mm.
you'd said at the time, which was unusual back then, you said put UV on them.
Yeah.
If you're going to breed them, put UV on. So I bought, I think it was like an Exoterra T8 or something. Christ knows how it didn't melt these lizards, but I was like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. And set off. Weirdly enough, these Cresties are actually still alive.
Wow.
So, yeah,
Nice.
the female will be, I think, 16 this year or 17 this
Oh,
year.
shit.
So that was it. That set us off, and then we got us first babies, and it
Mhm.
was like, whoa, this is mental. Even my mum liked the Cresties, so it was a big deal.
So they
And
were
then
the
that's
first
kind of
species you bred. They were the first ones you ever bred.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, they were.
That magical feeling watching the first beta,
Yeah,
mate.
yeah.
It's
The first one we kept for about 6 months. It was like
right.
it was ready to go. And we're like, nah, keep
Just
hold
keep
of it.
it. Just keep it. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we did that for a couple of years, and then I'd done work experience with you,
Mhm.
and that then set that off.
Yeah.
And started like doing them like just randomly skiving sixth form, cleaning out baby snakes instead. And they'd be like, "Why don't you come to your biology class on a Tuesday afternoon?" I was like, "Because you don't pay me." It's like the dude bungs me 20 quid. I'm 16. This is what I want to do.
Sorry, school. Sorry. Sorry.
Well, I still passed my A levels, so it's all
Oh,
good.
we got away with it then.
Yeah. Weirdly though, it was biology, and how much biology do we use in our jobs? It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Would have kind of been useful, I suppose.
yeah. But when they started doing like Mendelian genetics and stuff, I was like, ugh, I already know this.
Yeah.
It's like,
I've already
tell
had
me
a
about
crash
an
course.
albino royal python, I'll tell you what you do. But yeah, and it sort of like it spiraled from there. And then when you'd moved to Sheffield and I'd then got the job at T Pets, I then started enjoying things like staff discount
Yeah.
and going, oh, we'll take these snakes home now. And it ended up like, I think I had 80 odd adult snakes at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like king of the rat keepers at this point. Everything was stacked high and all that.
Yeah.
And then started breeding them. And then one year, like we topped out and done like 250 baby snakes at home
Okay.
at the same time as doing more than that in the shop. And it
Mhm.
was like, in the shop, do that, go home, do that. And it was at that point that I went, this is a job now. Like,
Mhm.
this is way more than a hobby. I was already working as a job, but
Yeah.
the home thing became actually you're just commercially producing these animals. You're not enjoying them anymore, sort
Yeah.
of thing. So we started to cut down and then like really streamlined and sort of started to go, well, I like it, but someone else will like it more. So we'll
Mhm.
pop it in the shop or whatever. And
Yeah.
then yeah, so that's kind of how it
It's,
spiraled really.
it's easy for it to become a busman's holiday
Yeah.
And that definitely happened to me. I share that experience with you wholeheartedly. And I
Mm.
mean, at Snakes and Adders Leeds, when you were there with us, we
Mm.
had the breeding room in the cellar, and we had a lot of like pythons and boas, and
Yeah.
I had the I mean, tokay morphs way back when, and all the other stuff,
Yeah.
and that was all fine and dandy, but even that started to get to a point where it was hard to manage.
Mm.
You would, by the time someone had finished one end of the room, you were starting at the other end of the
Yeah.
room again. There was never that break of, you know. And we made the mental decision when we moved to Sheffield, one, to streamline the collection and shrink the
Mm.
shop considerably. So effectively, nigh on all of the breeding stock went.
Mm.
But equally, it was around at that point, if not slightly before that, I completely bailed on keeping at home. Because for me, I mean, the reason we moved to Sheffield was we'd had Cole, my son, and
Mm.
I didn't want to miss him growing up.
Yeah.
So by the time I'd done the Leeds trek, it was too much, man. And then to
Mm.
come home and think, shit, got 15 vivariums to clean out and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
It I think sometimes it's hard to maintain your passion when you're also a shop owner. I
Yeah.
think it's a really difficult balance. Um, and like obviously you're a shop owner now. What on earth possessed you to open your own shop? Are you doing
Huh. I think so. I think what did it for me was I'd done it for other people for a
Yeah,
long time.
yeah,
By this point, I'd done work experience with you. I'd worked the odd Saturday and things like that for your
yeah,
stuff. So that was maybe like a year and a half, 2 years by the time
mm,
that ended. Then it was like 10 years of tea pets.
yeah,
And I think it was the idea that because you'd learn as you were going about like what works, what doesn't work, and you'd be sort of like, this would work better, but it's not your shop. So you can't just go, I'm doing it, deal with it. Although
mm,
we did at times, but not like in a business sense kind of thing.
mm,
And then you just thought, you know what? I could do this.
yeah.
And then, well, did.
And you took
And
the
it went
plunge.
downhill from there.
Yeah, that was all she wrote. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how much of a struggle has it been? Like, did you get help initially? Was it the bank of mom and dad or a bank loan, or did you have
Yeah.
savings or?
So it was a combination. So there was some money put aside. So like when my sister had moved out and stuff, there was money given to her towards the house and things like that that mum
Okay.
and dad like set aside. And then when my nana passed away, there was inheritance and sort of thing. It was all there as this pot for kind of if you want it towards a house, if you want it towards this, it's
Yeah.
there for when
Buy
you
a
want
car
it.
with it, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, well, this seems a legit use. um, let's do it. So we did it
Yeah.
out back. Um, and sort of looking back on it, like I think it was maybe better part of 15 grand, something like that.
Okay.
And looking back, I wish I'd waited, doubled that, and gone a bit bigger and a little bit more of this and a little bit more of that, done that slightly different, but that all costs
That's the
kind of
benefit
thing.
of hindsight, though, Jordan.
Well, yeah.
You could ask almost any shop owner; they're going to have the
Mm.
same attitude.
Yeah.
I bought a shop from Matt, Todd, and I paid way over the odds for that shop as a going concern. I could have set the same shop up brand new for half what I paid for it as a going concern. Um, but that's 2020 rear view vision, man.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works. So, um, but yeah, for me, rather than inheritance, it was bank of mom and dad, and then the bank. Basically, they gave me the seed money that would make the bank entertain the
Mm.
loan I required to buy the shop, if that
Yeah.
makes. So yeah, I mean it's that's 23 years ago now. So I'm an old man, I'm aging myself. Shit, these white hairs are fully in. Let me tell you.
Yes.
you know, I, as with all shops, and I've had my fair share. You have ups and downs. Has there been any particular challenges that you've had to segue, overcome? But whether it was working with me or with Matt or now with your own business.
Yeah, Jesus, how long you got?
I
So
think the memory's pretty good on the computer, so just rock and roll, bro. We'll go for it.
as we've discussed many times, I am cursed when when it comes to shops. So working with you, I don't think there were any natural disasters. I
No,
don't
I don't think so.
think.
I think we managed to avoid that.
Yeah.
Plenty of other disasters, just no natural ones.
Yeah, so like starting at T Pets and everything, we had um everything was sort of fine and dandy, everything started off great. Um there was the decision to open a second shop, which then became very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of the first time that place sort of tripped,
Yeah.
was when we all went, shit, shouldn't have done that. And then sort of dealing with that, going through it over like the years that it took to kind of build that back up. That was weird. Being,
So was
I
it
think
too big too soon? They'd not
I
not
think so.
consolidated enough.
I think so. It was doing really really well,
Mhm.
and almost excelling at that
Right.
point. And I think it was kind of right. Let's keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
So the second shop was open and stuff, but it was sort of, the planning was a bit weird. Well, it was lacking basically. So kind of the second shop opened, but it only had like two Vivs in a corner and a shelf over there, and it was just a bit strange. And the location was a bit weird and all that. So I stayed in the Kirkstall shop. Like
Yeah.
I never went up to the other one, because I was kind of a bit like, I don't really want that. Like I want to work where I work. I'll
Yeah.
sort this. You're all good. Um, so we sort of got through that eventually once that all got sorted out. And obviously at this point, this wasn't my business, but it was a hell of a learning curve for
Mm.
opening your own, is going, don't do that.
Yeah.
But then through that, I sort of ended up making friends with suppliers and
Yeah.
things like that. So Brian Siddle,
Mm.
um, blast from the past.
Character from the past. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. But he was really decent about
Mm.
like supplies and things like that. So I got to know him quite well. So when I opened at Peculiar Pets, I went straight to Brian for my frozen food and things like that. Um, and he even daft stuff like just kind of working out that this is what you need to run this shop versus
Yeah.
what you would need to do that. So that sort of went on, and it all eventually came good, kind of thing. And the second shop closed. Then in 2015, on Boxing Day, we had the flood. So I was sat there at the counter. I was working. Matt was having that day off because he'd done Christmas Eve sort of thing, and we'd
Yeah.
done that. And I was sat at the counter, and it'd been a bit quiet by this point. We'd sort of trailed off, and I was looking out of the door at Kirkstall Road, and there was water going down the road. I was
Wow.
like, it's not raining. Like, what the hell? So I got up and looked down the road, and there's just this weird like stream
Wow.
forming. My other half at the time was working at Card Factory on Kirkstall Road. Down
Yeah.
near there was a pub on the river, and it
Mm-hmm.
was in that retail part that built behind there. And he sent me this message, and it was a picture of their stock room with like 3 inches of water on the floor. I was like,
Oh,
oh, this is
shit.
bad. But at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, it's fine. We're right down the road, kind of thing. And then this water just kept creeping and creeping and creeping. So I rung Matt. I was like, you really need to come now.
Yeah.
I think this is going to
Sharpish.
be bad.
Yeah.
And then it started like, it was on the news that it was going to peak at 11 p.m. I was like, it's 4 o'clock.
And we're
Like,
already here. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the first 2 hours, I think it went over the curb and was sort of lapping at the door, maybe an inch or so. Um, so it was sort of like, well, what do we actually do? Because
Is it worth explaining you had a subterranean
oh
level?
yeah, well that was our big. So our breeding stock lived in the cellar,
Yep.
and we knew that there was like a hole to the outside world because these were old shops. So we were sort of like, well, where do we put it? Because I think there must have been 200 snakes down there
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah.
But then there was everything on the shop floor. So we're like,
Mhm.
well, we can't shove it all in Vivs because they've all got like bearded dragons in them or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're like, right, let's call 18 inches the magic number, get it all 18 inches off the shop floor. If it gets worse than that, we cannot do anything else, kind of thing. So
Jesus Christ.
200 snakes came up the stairs, one by one by one by one, and as much electrical gear as we could grab, all this kind of stuff. And then that took us maybe an hour or two. By the time that had happened, it was coming under the front door. But weirdly, the floor was so crap and old that it was running straight into the cellar through the floor. So that kind of saved the shop floor for a bit. And then
Okay.
as the night went on, it was like a scene from Titanic. You looked down the little stairwell and the lights were all flashing and stuff because that had all gone tits up.
Shit.
And it was like this water coming up the steps, and it was just like, this is messed up. We ended up measuring the water level with a can of Dr. Pepper.
Right.
We had it on a shelf, on a step, and basically it was like, when that goes under, we know how quick it's rising. That took about 10 minutes. So
Oh,
like, this is bad. Eventually all the electrics went off, apart from one socket,
right.
which was, so we had, it was around the time like T5s became a thing, and we had a 54-watt unit sat on this massive mesh chameleon enclosure. So we flipped it upside down and lit the room with a T5.
Right.
So
Crap.
thanks Arcadia on
Yeah.
that. And we were like, well, we've just got to wait now. We've got to wait and see how deep it gets. So everyone was kind of safe and dry, and all the bottom bibs were empty. Everything was essentially on shelves at this point. Health and safety would have had an absolute fit if they'd
Yeah, I
seen
bet.
some of these stacked up animals and stuff.
What are you gonna do though? What other choice
Well,
was?
this was it. And so we ordered a burger. We went, right, we'll have to eat. This was at about, I think about 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're like,
Right.
we're in this till the end.
Mm.
Let's get some food. Let's just sit down, watch it soak through the carpet, kind of thing. And which, to be fair, ended up doing us a favor because that carpet was hideous.
Mm.
So when it went, we were all like, thank God for that. And it had been stained by every snake and lizard you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
So it needed to go.
Yeah.
So we sat eating these burgers by T5 lighting. And then it got to pretty much bang on 11 o'clock, and the
Yeah.
water, as if like instantly, just drained against the front door. Like, it got up against the front door, but we had a load of pro rep tortoise life, like using that as sandbags
Thanks,
against the door.
Peregrine.
Thanks, Peregrine. And it worked. Like, we were so
Yeah.
surprised that it worked. And then it just dropped like 5-6 inches really quickly, and you could
Right.
literally see this swell like move down Kirkstall Road. It was so weird. But as we were like looking out the front door, watching this like horror scene going on, a bench from outside the pub on the river floated by,
Oh, mate.
like
Way.
the proper like square four-seater kind of thing.
God.
Then the bread trolleys from Asda, one of them went by, and I think the weirdest one was the canoe.
Oh shit.
We think someone had got clever thinking they were going to go down. And this canoe like sort of bounced off the front of the shop, but there was no one in it. And we were a bit like, do we need to tell someone about that canoe? Because is some dude just floundering around on Kirkstall Road?
Yeah, someone's died now, like
Yeah.
falling out their canoe. Oh my.
And it was so weird. And then we started hearing about like the centre of Leeds was flooded and all this. And it took hours and hours to rise. And
Mm.
then within half an hour, Kirkstall Road was dry.
No way.
It was just odd. And like, you were looking out and there were like wheelie bins and bits of park benches and all kinds of stuff. And it looked like something out of like when you see like American Hurricane kind of thing.
Yeah.
It looked like that. And that were it. It were done. The cellar was still full because the water table had risen so much.
Yes.
The fire brigade, bless them, made like a special case of it and came out to drain the cellar.
Right.
Because they're like, obviously you've got living things, we need to get this sorted. All the time, the Chinese takeaway that were next door were like, well, can you do ours? They're like, well, you don't have live animals. And they're like, no, but can you do ours? Like, no, because you're not a priority. Later on that night, that Chinese takeaway was sending orders out as well.
No way.
Yeah, they still had sewage on the floor in the front of the shop, and they were sending orders out. And it was just like, I am never, ever eating there.
Holy moly.
They tried for I think about 2 hours, and they just gave up because it wasn't shift. They were essentially pumping West Yorkshire at this point. Like, there was that much in the water table. So it was like, right, we'll just call it a day around. I think it was around midnight. Water had gone, all that, and we just went right in the morning. Make a plan what we're going to do. We'll contact the landlord, all this kind of thing. Work out what the hell we're going to do. Customers, obviously, phones were blowing up by this point. It was like, if you need anything, or it was kind of felt like saying, unless you've got a boat, just don't come. Don't come anywhere near it. Following morning, probably a good 30 odd people were already there when we got there.
Right.
And it was just this huge show of like regular customers. And to be fair, even people whose names we didn't know, but we knew them from the shop. And they were just there
Yeah.
like, right, what we're doing, where we're going. And we literally shipped an entire shop out across Yorkshire to regular customers that we knew had rack systems or had spare vivs or could literally just in a warm room keep some stuff alive for a couple
Yeah.
of days.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sent a massive pile of rainbow boas off to a friend of mine, and she is petrified of snakes.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, I don't care what's in the box, give us the box. It can come home, I can water it, I can keep it alive, that's fine, just put it in the thing.
Mm.
The day I went to collect these snakes, when we finally got into the other shop, the female Colombian had given birth. So I opened this box to check that everyone was all right before setting off. And I was like, there were 2 in here before. Now there's 22.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
So she was horrified.
Yeah, I bet. Like,
So that
oh
all
my
went off,
God.
and we ended up. The landlord had basically given us a shop in Headingley, so like up the road.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't really know the full agreement, but it was basically a case of take the shop, we'll work out rent later, we'll probably keep it the same as down here because it was a bigger shop and everything. It was just move sort of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pretty much in a day, we set up another shop.
That's insane.
Again, with an army of people. And then that day, I think we kept KFC in business because I think we spent about 150 quid on chicken wings.
So it was
And we all just,
totally devastated. The other shop was just completely wrecked.
yeah. It was strange as well because like we'd moved everything out, and then when it was empty is when you notice what it really looked like. Because when it was full of vivs, it just looked like the shop.
Yeah.
And it was damp, but it looked like the shop. But then when it all came out and you could see like the watermarks up the walls, and then you went in the cellar because the cellar drained pretty much overnight, which was helpful.
Yeah.
And you could sort of see like rack systems that had just fallen over and were melting in this wall. It was just the weirdest thing to witness. And this was all Boxing Day as well, so we were all like, "Merry
Yeah,
Christmas!"
because we don't work hard enough. Like there isn't enough shit going on.
It was,
Let's
and
deal with the flood as well.
yeah, and it was things because we were coming off the back of fixing from having the second shop,
Yeah.
and then there was that. So the builders and whatever had told us you'd probably be there about 8 weeks. We ended up being there for 9 months. In the centre of Headingley, in Studentville. So it was 9 months of actual torture. Like,
So the takings took a nosedive because you didn't have the market there, or
yeah, it was. I
or...
mean, regulars and people that were buying live food every week, that never stops. That
Yeah.
And the support was unreal. Like people stuck with us kind of no matter what. It was, yep, I'll be there. Oh, don't worry, I'll climb over that viv that you're still putting together. We'll get us live food.
Yeah.
But the new custom was hard because we didn't really want to sell these students bearded dragons.
Yeah.
Because they were going to get rid of them in 12 months kind of
They're
thing.
transient, aren't they? That's the thing.
Yeah. And it was things like, so we had this customer that came in and she was a student and she says to me, how long do these lizards live? And it was a bearded dragon, so I said, so like 10, 15 years about your average. And she told me, she went, God, it's like having a kid. And I was like, promise me you won't breed, because
ever.
if you think you're doing well at 10.
I got it to 15 and then my child died. Like, oh my God. Like
it. And then she says to me, oh, but I like these tortoises. It's like, you need to stop now.
Slow your roll, please. If you don't.
And then it was a lot of that. It was a lot of dealing with people who were just in for a look, and it was the free zoo crowd and that sort of thing. And they were entertaining in their own way, but they weren't paying the bills.
Yeah.
So while we were up there, it all sort of it ticked along, but there was bill upon bill that kept appearing from the other place, and insurance for this and this for this. So it was just a very tense time.
They worked there harder, was Matt under a lot of pressure, or palm a lot of the pressure onto you. Yeah.
I was manager at this point. So basically anything with a pulse was my problem, which was fine. But sort of trying to run a shop and run someone's life is quite difficult. And I don't mean that in a callous way. It was just you can't have both sort of thing. You have to pick. Do you want a manager or do you want someone to listen to your problems? Because I either have to go feed 200 snakes or you can tell me all about your bad day.
Yeah.
And I think the flood and that aftermath definitely started to get a bit difficult.
Yeah.
It was around that time that it was looking like I wasn't going to stay at T Pets for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we ended up where some of the royals started showing health problems.
Right.
But we'd already paired for an entire breeding season.
Right.
So we'd 25, 30 males had already gone across 30 odd females, and it was like shit. And when we started seeing the problems, we'd had it all treated, gone to the vets and all that kind of thing, but it wouldn't go.
Yeah.
And then that was like just another thing on top. I think looking back on it, quite honestly, that it was some kind of like arena virus or whatever it was, but it was never confirmed. And
Well, it wasn't back then. You wouldn't know.
well,
We only
yeah,
discovered it a bit back, or
yeah,
in common
and
knowledge.
it was sort of slowly but surely we lost most of these snakes, which a
Mm.
lot of them we'd raised.
You're
So
right.
it was kind of like, and when people talk about, oh, I lost my passion, try that.
Yeah.
Try that for a year. Because it was, and it never went beyond the Royals,
Yeah.
ever. It was always Royals, and then it hit a couple of blood pythons,
Mm.
and it hit one of the dwarf Burmese pythons, which are still one of my least favorite snakes on the planet, and it is your fault.
They're
So,
awesome. What are you on about? Stop
around
talking
the
shit,
time
Jordan.
when T Pets opened, Crystal Palace brought them in, and we bought 2 pairs around the time you did as well. So it's basically your fault because you introduced us to Darren.
Yeah. I'll take
And
that.
yeah, I've never met a snake as violent as one of them.
So earlier on in this, you alluded that, maybe there'd been more than one episode of drama in your reptile life.
Yeah.
So fast forward to your now running Peculiar Pets.
Yeah.
You've settled into your first however long period in business, and then what?
So no, not last, August, we're in 2023. July the 5th, 2021. Not that I remember it or anything. Someone drove through the front of my shop. And basically it was about 10 p.m. at night. It was a Monday, and we don't open Mondays, or we certainly weren't at the time. And I got in the bath. I was nice and chilled, and my phone kept buzzing, and it was the ringtone from a Facebook phone call, and I detest that ringtone. So I just kept ignoring it.
Yeah.
And then I looked, and it was a customer that lived local called Steve, and I was like, oh. So I messaged him, I was like, oh, I'll ring you back in a bit. And as I did that, this photo pinged through on Messenger, and it was like this weird bent shutter. Hetman White and the area around it, there's a lot of crashes. It wasn't news that someone had driven to. So I was like, oh, great, whatever. And then I was like, hang on.
Any
like, that is my shutter. So I like launched out the bath, ran downstairs, like, Josh, someone's driven through my shop. We need to go.
Yeah.
And then on the drive over, it was like, well, what do you know? Like, there was no time for conversation, just get in the car, go kind of thing. So we turned up, half of Hetman White was stood on the street. There were police cordons off and everything like that. Loads of regular customers sat on the side of the pavement like, oh, you're here, this is what we know, this is what we found out. The police then wouldn't let me through. So I was like, that's my shop. I could do with you just pissing off out of the way. And she stopped me, and this police officer says to me, I need to take your name and your details, like, get them off someone else.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I need your details. And I was like, look, that's my shop. I have zero idea what's running around in there right now.
Yeah.
I need to just get and talk to the fire brigade and find out what's going on. All right, well, you can't go there yet because we're still cutting him out of the car. And without thinking, I just turned around and went, fucking leave him. Leave him.
I want to get to me blue tongue skinks. Get him out the bloody way.
So it was like, just get out of my face. So anyway, eventually it spoke to the fire brigade. Basically, we're moving this ruggle. When that's moved and we know it's safe and the roof's not going to come down on you, we'll let you in and you can start doing like your cleanups. Like, brilliant, not a problem. So I went to stand at this cordon, and 5 separate firemen, officers, whatever, came over individually to ask if there was anything dangerous in the shop. And 5 times I answered with no, absolutely nothing. Can we just speed this up?
Yeah.
And then another had come, and another. I was like, I swear to God, if I answer this question one more time. So eventually we got in, and one of my regulars at the time was Emily Breyer,
Yeah.
which a lot of people know, and I know you know.
Yeah.
Her, Caitlin, and Macy, bless them, at like 10:30 at night, kind of like sort of pajamas, sort of real clothes on, had just turned up.
Mm.
And because obviously they keep reptiles, it was like, right, we need to box this half of the shop, and then that rack needs to go, and that needs to go. And we did exactly the same thing. We literally just boxed everything, shoved it in people's cars, and off it went.
Right.
Most of it came to mine. A lot of it went to Emily's, and then stuff like that. And then the next day we moved it all into the shop next door that was empty. But the landlord on the night hadn't thought to bring the keys for the empty shop next door. Yeah. So it had to come home to go back, and it was all just a thing. But there were a few like animals like wandering around on the floor, and we found a couple that were dead as well on the night. And then I started seeing all these Facebook news sites and stuff like
Yeah.
Yappa had done an article titled 250 Snakes Loose in Heckmondwike.
Oh, brilliant.
By this
The
point, I
good
was
old
on.
British press. Yeah, good old British press.
I wouldn't mind. I even spoke to Yap on the night.
Right.
By this point, I was on about 35 minutes sleep. So I took to Facebook, then I was like, are you fucking mental?
Yeah, yeah.
And then very quickly deleted that comment and went, you know what? No.
No.
So then we just got sorted, and it was really weird. Like, people seemed to be expecting some sort of like mental breakdown. And I was just like, we'll box this, we'll do that. And I was really, really calm. And a few of them said, like, are you all right? I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm fine. It's all good. Don't worry about it. Just box it all up. And they're like, yeah, but are you really all right? I was like, yeah, I'm not bothered. Like, it's cool. We can sort this and we can do this. Because part of the AAL licensing, we have to have an emergency plan.
Yeah.
So literally in my head, as much at the time when I was writing it, I thought this is a load of shit. I'm never going to need this.
Yeah. Whatever.
And then I was like, right, we move animals, we do this, we check this is right, we do this. So that all got sorted, and then we moved into the shop next door. But because we weren't in the licensed premises, we couldn't sell animals.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
and then because logistically running the dry goods out of that shop, there's one next door, health and safety would have gone mental.
Right.
It just wouldn't have worked, because the way we'd had to get the animals in obviously wasn't laid out like a shop. It was like rack on, viv on sort of thing.
Oh,
So I was
God.
like, I'm never going to get this cleared. So we're just going to have to call it. We had all the right insurance, which I thank God for that. So we were covered business interruption and all that kind of thing. And then again, we were meant to be closed about 8 weeks, and we opened 6 months later.
And did the insurance pay out? They covered you for that, like
Oh yeah,
the sort of breaking business clause and all the rest of it.
Business interruption, stock loss, everything. To be fair, weirdly as well, last week I got an email from like the other half of the insurance, the loss assessor, saying that the third party is paying my excess.
Right.
Champion. So that it's still ongoing with them, but I was like, oh, at least it's a bit of nice news after all that. So yeah, and we just sat for 6 months raising animals, and we had the best breeding season we've ever had.
Really? After all that stress? No way.
Yep. So we had bearded dragons. I think we had 148 at the time, and stuff like that. And then when it was getting to where we reopened, it was like, right, they've got to go. So it was like, right, wholesale the lot, get it gone, so that we could reopen with a reasonable amount of livestock.
Yeah.
But obviously, all these 6 months, we were feeding these bearded dragons, we were feeding these leopard geckos, corn snake, all this stuff that was in the incubator when the crash happened.
Yeah.
We didn't turn the incubator off, because we thought we were going for 8 weeks. And in the following 8 weeks, we hatched just an outrageous number of animals, and we could have stocked another shop with the amount we produced, which was the idea of having a breeding season like that, was to wholesale it out. But it sat there eating and pooing and costing electric. So in the end, quite luckily, the insurance were really understanding about it, and basically said, like, you are covered for that, essentially as like a loss of, not quite a loss of earnings, but like a loss of profit, because you'd be paying to feed these animals, but you've no way of making it back, sort of thing. So we ended up getting a percentage of what we'd spent taken off the profit that we were covered for. So I was like, well, small graces. But it still cost us money. Like we weren't covered for every cricket we used and all that kind of thing.
I mean, that's a scary thought. Having to pause here, even with the stock we've got now, with no eggs in the incubator, the idea of having to maintain, feed, water, clean out, or this level of stock week in, week out without the income, and you're not being paid in real time. You've got to use your savings while that's happening, and you get paid out after the event. Shit, that's going to start biting pretty quick. You know,
it was surreal, like, because when you're doing your order for, say, like what you're going to do in the shop that week, you don't pay that much attention to the fact you order a bit more because you're going to feed your own lizards. It's just second nature that, oh, well, we'll get that many and I know I can take 5 of them off and do whatever. When that's all you're ordering, that number at the end of the invoice suddenly goes, shit, that's a lot of food. I mean, and Peregrine were amazing. Like, they really, really were. I really like my accounts manager at Peregrine. She is wonderful. And bless her, she really, really played fair on that. And if she hadn't, we'd have had to fold. Like, if it was, no, we need these invoices paying, we need this doing right now. Every time we got an interim payment, it was paid to them to try and just be like, look, in good faith, this is yours. And then when we reopened in the December, it was pretty good. It still took us a while to get the full payment. We didn't actually get paid until the end of the January into the February. So by that point, we'd been closed better part of like 8 months. Wow. So we'd been waiting 8 months. But then the shop came back and it was a completely different layout, because anyone that knows or follows my shop knows that I rearrange everything on a weekly basis.
5 minutes. Oh, just having a little change round, guys. What fucking change?
I'm in the middle of one at the minute.
Oh my God. Just leave everything where it is.
No, that shop is like a TARDIS. Every time I move it, I find more space.
So, having gone through all this and this career that you've had, even though you're still a young man, really, you've been in this hobby a considerable length of time. So, if someone approached you and said, I really want to open a reptile shop, what would your advice be?
I've been asked that several times, usually by college students that are on work experience and that sort of thing. And my short answer is don't. But I'll always answer it properly afterwards. But I think you have to have a very different outlook on the animals themselves and your attitude towards the way you sell them. Because you might want to go into it and everything's going to live in a 19-foot walk-in enclosure, whether it's a 3-inch leopard gecko or a 20-foot retic. And it's all going to have T5 and it's all going to have this, and everyone's going to want to do it my way and the advanced herp husbandry way and all this kind of thing. And the reality is,
you won't sell them.
So you have to be able to find, which I know you talked about this before in a video, is like, you've got to find that middle ground where you still sell it and you'd be happy if you kept it in that. And then you go, but you can also add all this.
Aspire.
And and if they do it, they do it. And in the same way as like with the animals that you stock, now I make no secret of the fact I cannot stand bearded dragons. I breed bearded dragons. Without blowing my own trumpet, I'm genuinely good at keeping bearded dragons. They're not my species. They're just not my thing.
But you're a businessman and you understand there's a market for them.
Exactly. I understand why they tick literally every single box. And if someone asks me for a first lizard, I will recommend a bearded dragon. And I'm not lying. It doesn't mean I want a bearded dragon at home just because I'm telling you how good they are. So that's a weird lesson to learn, is when you start working with a species that you just don't get on with or you just don't click with, but you know you've got to stock it.
You've got no choice. I mean, the majority of shop owners are going to have a passion of some form. You assume some sort of experience base, and that tickles their pickle. I'm oddball colubrids, always have been. So I look at a corn snake and I'm just like, it's a corn snake. It's not a bad snake. It's a cool snake, and I sell many corn snakes each year. You couldn't pay me enough money in the world to keep corn snakes out. They hold no allure whatsoever. You give me some irritable, musky, dirty, ugly, brown, rat snake that wants to chew my face off every time I go in. Yes, please. I'll have 10. You know,
see,
like that's just the way I am.
I'm completely the flip of that. I've
Yeah.
had a corn snake for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Like at no point in my keeping, working, any type of reptile interaction have I not owned a corn snake.
Yeah.
And
It's
I
mad, isn't
don't
it?
think I ever won't. I really like the species. Um, I think like the snake side for me is royals.
Yeah.
I like the snake.
Yeah.
I don't like what they became. And
Yeah.
I think that's another thing is like learning a market and learning from the get-go. Like you
Mm.
can't wing it and spend 10 grand on royal morphs for your local market to go, we just want normals actually.
Yeah.
Because and you've got to be really willing to kind of test the water and then really adapt to your market, I think. And I think keepers that want to become shop owners, because it's a hobby and it's still a passion,
Yeah.
only have what they want to keep and what they like doing. And that might work. I mean, obviously, we used to work with Danny Craig, and he's a
Mm.
fabulous keeper and one of
Yeah.
the people that really taught me a lot of what I know.
Yeah.
But I couldn't run a shop on what he breeds.
No, no.
I'd be a millionaire if I did, but it's not. You're not going to get
But
10
equally,
people for monkey face.
because of his experience in the shop, he
Mm,
would also acknowledge that as well and go, yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
you know, I'm not sure that Nautilus geckos are going to be in this season. You know,
Yeah.
like and that's the I suppose you've got to divorce yourself from the hobby to a certain extent. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to completely remove it from you, but pretty much you need to accept that you have got VAT tax, employee
Yeah.
wages, national insurance. You've got all of the electrics to pay for, which we know is going
Mm.
through the roof at the minute.
I I think
Everything
it's a
else.
fine line that people, because I think people hear what you just said there about like you lose your hobby almost.
Yeah,
And I think that feeds into people thinking that we're then just about a business.
yeah,
Like it's, oh, you're not a hobbyist, you're a
yeah.
shop owner. It's like, well, I can be both.
Passion doesn't die, but
No.
the hobby. I'm not a hobbyist. I'm a businessman that keeps reptiles and specializes in them.
Mhm.
And without being arrogant, I'd like to think that I know one or two things about it as well. You know, and just if not, do I still need to be a hobbyist to have like a discernible level of knowledge? Do you like
No,
just because
I
you
don't.
work?
I think when you start differentiating between how you're keeping, so I keep my breeding corn snakes with
Mhm.
the intention of breeding them for profit.
Yes.
So it's housed, easily cleaned, all that kind of thing. They're fed in a different way to how I'd feed a pet because
Yeah.
I need the females to put weight on, not maintain weight.
Yeah.
Little things like that. If you don't have that business attitude to it, I think it's probably
Yeah.
best. Then you're still a hobbyist, and it's like for me, we breed a lot of leopard geckos.
Yeah.
If one of my females skips a year,
Yeah.
it's not good. I
Mhm.
could be missing out on 20 baby geckos,
Yeah.
and each of those could retail for X, Y, and Z, and that then pays you rent, your electric, everything else that we've literally just talked about. And I think people who are a hobby breed, like a genuine hobby breeder,
Yeah.
miss that point. Is that if you have a bad year,
Mhm.
or you just post it on Facebook and everyone goes, "Oh, better luck next year."
Yeah.
If my entire breeding stock fails for a full year, I've got to buy what I would have produced,
Yeah.
which for a teeny tiny shop like me is a big deal. Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
house a lot of livestock in a relatively small space, but we produce a lot of it because that cuts that cost. And I think people don't see that side of it a little bit.
Like I mean a few times we've mentioned it, we've both mentioned it. Profit
Mm.
is profit a dirty word? Bearing
No,
like you see these groups, they absolutely hang us out to dry, profit hungry bastards. All they
I
want
think,
to do is sell reptiles, make money, chuck us out the door. They don't care. Uh,
yeah, I think I think that mentality comes from, say, a hobbyist who's relatively isolated from, say, like a big town. They
mm,
don't have a local shop.
mhm.
So they buy online,
Yeah,
and their only real interaction with the outside reptile community is online.
the
And
war
once you
rooms in
start
groups. Yeah,
seeing, yeah, and it's once you start seeing that mentality being repeated, and you start thinking, well, yeah, maybe I've never been to a reptile shop, and maybe that is what's happening. And
mm,
then you might see an animal in a reptile shop that is dearer than your local breeder's selling it for. And
mm,
it might be that, I mean, like leopard geckos, for example, I sell my Leos quite cheap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more because I like making pretty Leos. I don't really mind if they come out striped, albino, whatever.
Yeah.
I breed for a nice variety, but I also don't need it to be 100 quid.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll play fair on it because I've bred it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's local breeders in my area that sell lesser quality albinos, for example, for
Mm-hmm.
sometimes nearly twice the price.
Right.
I get the flack for being money hungry when I put an albino up at £5 more than last year because things go up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's little things like that. I think the
How
people who
much
are
tax are they
regularly,
paying on that gecko?
yeah, I think
Golden question.
the people who are regularly interacting in reptile shops understand because they see the amount of thermostats stuck to the walls or the amount of plug sockets that we very craftily hide behind his vivs and stuff. And it's that kind of thing. I think if they're aware of the running and the daily kind of, wow, you really defrost that many mice and wow, you really use that many crickets, I think they're more open to the idea that actually that extra 10p we might have put on that is paying something.
Absolutely.
Um, but I think it does cut. There's been this weird sort of like shop breeder divide in
Mm.
like you should only buy from a breeder, you should only buy from whatever. And I'm like, well, why not both? I have animals that I breed from that are bought from breeders, but I have
Yeah.
animals that I breed from that are bought from shops or raised myself, whatever. But for me, I've asked the question several times in groups and never had an answer. Is I breed a lot of my own stock.
Yeah.
Am I a breeder or am I a money hungry shop owner?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's one of those. It's like, well, I bred it. I can show you mum and dad. I can do all the fun things that breeders apparently will always do for you, but often don't.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it in a building.
And I mean,
That's no different.
you look at some breeders like like money hungry, profit grabbing, and then here's my 200th baby boa that I produced this season.
Yeah,
Here's
yeah,
my 150th reticulated
yeah.
python. Oh, this is clutch 67 of my Royal Python breeding project.
It is. Yeah,
And you're like, oh, okay, but we're the dicks. Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay,
yeah,
but we pay VAT tax. We're registered. We have an animal activities license that we get inspected, put through the ringer on. We have to do fucking UVI checks, temperature checks, like record every sale with a like telephone number and name, all this sort of gear. And you think, and we're the dicks. How the fuck does that work? Like, and honestly, like you sort of alluded to it with the amount of stuff, like when you think about the infrastructure in the shop. Like I'm looking around mine now. So say there's 60 vivs. All you see is 60 vivs. You don't see
yeah,
the 60 separate elements that go into
yeah.
it. That's 60 bulb guards. It's
Mm-hmm.
60 water balls. It's
Yeah,
60 caves. Well, probably 120 caves.
yeah,
It's 60 logs or branches, probably 120 artificial plants.
yeah,
It's 4 bulk bags of substrates.
yeah.
By the way, that'll be replaced every 4 weeks because we've
Yeah,
recorded for the AAL, like, and
yeah.
all the rest of it.
Mm.
So, at which point, it's really short sighted. You want the opportunity to be able to come in and see these animals, see what we
Mm.
do, and all the rest of it, and then slate us and tell us that we're not
Yeah,
trying our hardest. And Jesus, like if you saw the 85-page document that is the AAL and all of the hoops that we have to jump through now, like
yeah,
you'd have a far greater appreciation of what it is that we go through, and the fact
yeah,
that like we're sat with star ratings and we're recorded and all the rest of it is crazy. So,
yeah.
you know, we'll move on from this because I don't want to get bogged down because it's easy for me to get irate and start kicking off. I'm not known for my patience, so if you were to assess what the key skills of your shop are, what is done well, what you're proud of, and then what elements within the shop, not necessarily what you do, but maybe the way the shop is, what would you change, improve, and what would you do moving forward to the
Okay.
shop, and what do you like about your shop?
Um, I think when we opened, it was all about we're going to do the whole advanced herb husbandry. It's going to be top of line kind of thing because I think it's very difficult for a shop to catch up on that if they're already running
Yeah,
because each week you go in, oh crap, I need to do this. So I was like, right, we open at that level and we stay there, and we've pretty much stuck to that. It's like lizards don't leave without UV, all this kind of thing.
mm,
Um, I think where that then fell down is that because we were in a relatively new area, and some of the local shops were sort of general pet stores with a bit of reptile.
Mm-hmm.
And we then had the sort of the backlash then of, well, why won't you sell me that bearded dragon into my faunarium with a heat mat or whatever? It's like trying to balance it then. And we did change. Like, I'm not saying that we suddenly went, screw UV, but it was like we sort of dialed it down a touch to
Mm-hmm.
meet people halfway. And
Yeah.
a lot of those people, quite happy to say, sort of caught up and
Yes.
went, right, we'll do that. And I quite like the fact that, or at least I think you do, that you can come into the shop and know nothing at
Mm.
all, but you can learn that that's the UV you need and that that's the thermostat you need. And you'll go away knowing how to use it
Yeah.
without knowing what a UVI is and why it's at 12 inches and why this is it. Because no one needs to know it. I need to know it.
Yeah.
So I can tell you exactly what you're doing, but you don't need to question why you're doing it. It's just
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it is I quite enjoy teaching people about what I like doing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what I like about my job is that I get to talk about my hobby essentially
Mm-hmm.
to people who like my hobby. So
Right.
you're sharing that, and if someone comes in and tells me that their guppies have just given birth, I'm like, that is mint.
Yeah.
And then usually they'll follow up with, oh, and then the molly's ate, and I'm like, sorry about that.
It's a learning curve.
Yeah. And it's like when we get young kids and they're like, we want to breed as leopard gecko and we've got his first eggs. And I think that's cool. That's
Cool,
really
man.
cool.
Yeah.
But then you also have the kind of when they come in and it's gone a bit wrong. And I like to think that you can come in and tell me good or bad, and we'll have a chat.
Yeah.
And we might fix it, or we might go, do you know what? This just isn't
Mm-hmm.
working for you, or whatever. And I think the kind of equipment that we stock reflects that as well. So like it's
Yeah.
all very cheap. But I don't remember the last T8 tube I sold, which
Right.
I'm quite happy about because it means
Yes.
that people are listening and moving forward and doing all that kind of thing. Um, but it sort of then means that some of your interactions are a little bit more confrontational. And I've said it a few times. It's one of the things I dislike about my job. So we're in one of the few retail sectors where the customer is not always right.
Correct.
Because they're asking your advice
Mm-hmm.
and they want your opinion.
Yeah.
They don't have to like your opinion, but
Absolutely.
they asked for it. Very much, you had this coming. And because I sort of grew up watching you serve customers, I have adopted.
Oh, that's a good thing. Oh my God. Yes.
I have a very similar. I'm
Straight.
going to tell you
Yeah.
what you need to do. You're welcome not to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but please don't moan at me in 3 weeks when
Yeah.
something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And most people take that with actually, yeah, I get that. That's fair enough. And it becomes banter and it's nice and you build a relationship.
Yeah.
Some people really take that as, well, why won't you sell me that? And it's like, well, reason number one, it's my shop. Do what I want.
Yeah.
And you do, it backs you into this corner where you feel genuinely quite
Yeah.
attacked by it all. And I refused to sell a guy a fighter fish a few months ago.
Yeah.
And he lost it, absolutely lost it.
Really?
All I asked is that he cycles his fish tank. It had taken him about a month.
Right.
I said we can reserve the fish. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
No, fuck you, brr.
Oh
And
my
he
God.
stormed out. He then came back and shouted, "Fuck you, gay boy," from the door, which
Oh.
amused me no end. I was like, "Oh, okay, bye then."
Okay.
And then weirdly enough, he came back a week later, apologized,
Mm.
shook my hand, and reserved the fish.
Oh my God.
And he came back and he says, I've gone away and I've looked at online or whatever, and I realized that you weren't bullshitting me. I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, no, I was doing myself out of a sale there and then because I was saying, don't
Absolutely.
take the fish.
Yeah.
And we've had it with thermostats. Like, you're telling me if I don't buy a thermostat from you, I can't have this answer. Like, I don't care where you buy it, but I
Yeah.
want to see it. I
Yeah.
want to see a picture of it or similar sort of thing.
Mm.
Because if you come back and go, I've got one and it's one of those round ones that sticks to the wall,
Yeah.
we're talking about a different piece of equipment. And
That's a daily occurrence, isn't it? Come
it
on,
is,
let's
it
be
is.
honest about
And
the
and
stat
and
thermometer mix up.
you don't
Yeah.
want to sit there and go thermometer, but you do find yourself like, and I think that's the struggle. That's the thing I don't like about my shop currently is that because it's relatively new and we get new customers, and a lot of them might have had not necessarily bad advice, but shy of the mark. and it might
Yes.
be, oh, you actually need to change this or do this.
Mm.
The confrontation wears thin. And
Yeah.
it's one of those where we have so many nice customers that want to just, their animals are their world. And they
Yeah.
want it to be
Yeah.
perfect. And then you've the others where you're like, I'm asking you to spend £5 on a pot of calcium, for God's sake.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to redesign your entire vivarium.
Yeah.
And it's the little conflicts that sometimes make you think, did I really make
It,
the right choice here?
it gets old, doesn't it? I mean, like
Mm,
after 23 years of it, I can tell you that it doesn't get any easier. And like, yeah, it just grinds, man.
mm,
You know, I've just refused you a sale. I've told you you're not having the snake.
mm.
One, because you're behaving like a douche, and two, you haven't got the equipment that you need to be able to keep it. So think about it logically. I am a profit-making business
Yep,
that only feeds his family when he makes sales.
yep,
And I've just refused your money.
yep.
Am I doing that to be difficult? Or am I doing that because I have a vested interest in you making the right choice?
Yeah,
You know, and they just don't connect the dots. You're talking to a brick wall and you just think, Jesus Christ, okay, go on, Gumtree. Fuck off.
yeah.
Get out my shop, you know, because there's only so much you can do and you want to
Mm,
try, but there is a limit. And
yeah,
Jesus Christ, it's like, you know, I'll give anybody a fair shake, but then it gets to a point where you're just like, you just want to be able to put it in a shoebox under your bed.
yeah.
And anything that runs counter to that is a piss take.
Yeah, as if the
Um,
preconception is just that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, shall we discuss the joys of customers coming in and taking an hour of your time and then going on Amazon to buy the very product that you've just recommended to them, with all of that wonderful free advice that you've just given? Like, are you really serious? Oh
Yeah.
my God.
I had one recently with that where they were sort of thinking about a leopard gecko. It was all good, and they went away, and then they came back, asked a few more questions. Absolutely fine. You can question me for weeks if you really need to. I am
Yeah.
down with that. And then they came back kind of randomly. There's a bit of a gap, and they just appeared. They went, "We've got everything." So instantly, the kind of alarm bells ring because I think this job makes you really untrusting,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
assume everyone's lying.
Yeah. You think, well,
So
I'm investing in you, and you've had 3 hours of my very precious time that I
yeah,
really don't have enough of.
yeah,
I've got 400 animals to look after, two staff to manage and make sure that everything's getting done. But I'm going to give you my undivided attention for an hour and a half
yeah,
for you to repay that kind service by fucking me up.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
And they came. This is we've got everything. I said, right, what thermostat is there? This is it was running a heat mat and it was an on off. I was like, all right, do you know which brand? Just so that I know, because in case they'd bought
It's
some
nice to
random
challenge
thing.
them to make sure they've read it and they know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially. And they showed me it, and it was a brand on Amazon that I genuinely hadn't heard of. But I was like, okay,
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. But you've set it up completely wrong
Yeah.
because the instructions that came with it are completely wrong.
Yeah.
And then it ended up this tank was actually a fish tank.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I can make it work, but by
Yeah.
the time we've done that, you might as well have just bought a Viv because
Yeah.
I'm going to have to sell you a lot more electrical equipment to balance it on top of this fish tank
Yeah.
than I would be to give you 4 screws and a fitting kind of thing.
Yeah.
And in the end, like we went through it all, we told them how to fix it, all this kind of thing. Not seen them since.
Really? Yeah. It just,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a weekly occurrence as
Yeah.
well. You know, it's infuriating. And I don't think people realize the toll
Yeah.
that takes. You know, this is the other side of it, the glimpse behind the veil, you know, like literally as we've just explained, we're busy men. And
Yeah.
we're not just sat there like as the oracle, as much as the advice is free
Yeah.
and it's goodwill that we're giving it you on. But you abuse that goodwill. You know, you really don't have the right to pout when I go, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really? You don't have
It,
the right to pout.
I think like going back to kind of like the breeder shop divide a little bit, it's that kind of you can't necessarily walk into a breeder's house, facility, whatever, and get their time. You
Yeah.
usually message them and wait.
Yeah.
So you don't have that free flow, let me just
Yeah.
verbal diarrhea all my questions, like kind of thing. And I don't mind. I know you do the same thing. It's like there isn't really a stupid question,
No.
like
No.
within reason.
Yeah.
But but it
You're
is.
there
It's
to
kind of
help.
you.
You're there to help.
Yeah, if you say to me, I know you explained it last week, but my thermostat seems a bit weird, I will go through it from scratch over and over and over. I have no problem with that because I'd rather that than you burn your house down or something
Absolutely.
stupid doing it
Yeah.
wrong. But there's that like expectation then that because you've done it, you'll then do it for every animal they've just bought from a breeder. I've had, well, we've all had I bought this royal, it's not feeding. Oh, okay. Is it that one you got off me? No, no, no. I got this one at the show,
Mm,
point of contention, and all that kind of thing. And it's like, champion, ask the person you bought it off because I have no history on this snake. I have
yeah.
no idea how old it is, no idea what it was eating.
Yeah.
I can't
Is it
really
on
do much.
multis? Is it on live? Is it doing this? Is it
Yeah.
doing that? I have no knowledge of
And
this
it's
animal
I can advise you, but I could be a million miles
from the
left
mark.
of where
Yeah,
I'm meant to be
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because this snake was eating a mouse that had been over a kettle, or it was eating a
Yeah.
multi-mammoth turned inside out, sacrificed to that god at 3 p.m. Royals, sort of thing. And you think, I'm going to tell you to give it a rat fluff or a wiener rat or whatever and hope for the best.
Yes.
Because that's about all I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't wave magic wands, but yeah,
No,
we're
and
supposed to.
as much as we'd like to, obviously we want to help, but it's
Yeah.
it's I think the limitation is what people don't understand is that we
Yeah.
can only do so much,
Yeah, yeah.
even though we want to.
And the give and take, not the take,
Mm,
I
mm.
think that's important. So you mentioned earlier that you'd got some breeding projects. So what
Yeah.
species are you working with currently at the shop?
Most of the stuff that we work with in the shop on the reptile front is actually our pet species.
Right.
When it was COVID and Brexit as a bit of a combination,
Mm.
meant that buying the species I wanted to have as like standard stock
Yeah.
was just getting daft.
Yeah.
The great bearded dragon shortage of 2020. I mean, whoever thought we'd live through that? It was like, how are we scrabbling to then pay 3 times more than they're worth for a
Yeah.
normal bearded dragon? But we did
Yeah.
it. We still did it,
The market
and
was strong enough for it.
it
Yeah.
was, and like it was weird, and it sort of made me go, do you know what? Make your own. Now we were already breeding leopard geckos, and I enjoy breeding leopard geckos just for the how cool is this one? And that then gave rise to Harvey, that weird paradox thing.
Yeah, yeah, he's cool.
That is now well, when you last saw him, he was hatchling. I was like, Chaz, what the fuck is this? And he's now like 10.5 inches. He's an absolute monster of an animal.
Nice.
And
Nice.
he's dad to quite a lot of the babies in the shop this year. And then produced another paradox, which
Oh,
was like,
nice.
uh, I still
That's
think
interesting.
I still think he absorbed his twin.
Right.
Um, but something is happening
Okay.
genetically with these weird spots, whatever. So yeah, it's that's my breeding projects. A lot of them aren't so much projects as they are just kind of literally a means to an end for stock. And I
Yeah.
breed morphs I like, and I breed from animals that I enjoy. I like leopard geckos, I like corn snakes and stuff.
Mm.
We don't breed our own royals
Right.
because I haven't got the energy and passion to do it. I like the snakes, and I like that someone else breeds them.
There's there's not exactly a shortage of them, is there?
Well, this is it.
Let's
So
be honest. If you need
I
to
have
source a royal, I think you'll be okay.
yeah, I have really nice customers who bring me really nice royals, and I just
Yeah.
think I'd rather that
Yeah.
than spend. It's more invest time in adult animals that I'm not overly bothered
Yeah.
for. Taste comes into it. We used to breed a few different weird gecko species. A lot of those projects have either moved on or we've sort of downsized and stuff. And this year we started breeding fish at like a frigging cichlid factory at the minute. I've got something like 300 baby electric blue acara, and I'm like, why are you doing this to me? I mean, it's great because it's all it's all stock, but you just think, Jesus Christ.
Oh,
But yeah, the reptile side of it, I streamlined a little bit, and I regret doing it slightly.
right.
Because we used to do like Central American banded geckos.
Mm.
We did. I've got a group of fat tails again,
Right.
having got rid of my previous group and gone. Shouldn't have done
Yeah.
that. I miss breeding black rats. As
Yeah.
I used to have a lovely pair of albino black rat snakes that
Mhm.
turned out to be het white side through a happy chance, which was nice.
Yeah.
And bits like that. I breed the Amazons.
Yeah.
They're probably my biggest hobby project.
Mm.
I don't care if these Amazons sell. I like poking bright orange snakes that want to eat your face. It is, I will breed Amazons year in, year out for as long as they'll let me. And I don't care if people want these babies, I will stack them high.
Is there a species over the years that you've produced that you're most proud of producing? or the what, and it won't necessarily be the most significant to the people watching. It was the most significant to you, the one that made you go, I'm really fucking stoked that I'm hatching this out, and I've done it, and I've ticked that box.
Herman's tortoises.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I didn't expect it to work.
Right. Okay. And was
um,
it a high proportion of success rate, or just one or two eggs hatching out, or
um, we did it over about 4 years or 3 years, and I think we got small. I mean, these females were about 12-year old, so they were the lower end of mature. We hibernated them in a less than conventional manner.
Yeah.
Actually, I brumated them. At my reptile room dropped really cold in winter,
Okay.
so we starved them. We let them drop, and it worked. And they didn't lose weight, so we knew they were cool enough, but they
Yes.
weren't in a fridge kind of thing. And we got about 50% hatch rate each year. So it would have been better if we'd done more of the kind of involved with the hibernation, but the
Yeah.
babies were brilliant. And like squashy tortoises is just the weirdest thing. We had one that hatched out like a rhombus. It was all
Really?
lopsided, yeah, because he was folded in the egg, but as
Right.
he'd stretched himself out, he'd gone that way first and ended up lopsided for about a week. And in my head, I kept thinking, this thing better straighten out. Like, I
Yeah.
can't have a lopsided tortoise. And they were brilliant. They were great fun. And then it came to getting the CITES paperwork, and DEFRA never replied to me. So I
Really?
ended up, my last clutch of them, I ended up having to rehome into rescues so they could get rescue paperwork because DEFRA wouldn't either refund me what I'd already paid or
Wow.
wouldn't reply to my email. So I was just like, shit to it. And I just lost interest in the project. But yeah, Herman's
How long
tortoises.
was the incubation on tortoise eggs? Tortoise is something I've never bred. So
I highly recommend
yeah.
it.
How long did
Squash
it take
tortoises. Um, it
from sort
varied
of
to be
egg
honest
laying?
because of the temperature dependent sexing. I
Yeah.
played with it each year.
Okay.
So I think the shortest we had, I think it was about 58 days, if I remember right. I mean,
That's a
because a
quick
fair few years.
turnaround. For an animal that's being born
Yeah.
with a shell, that's a quick turnaround. Yeah, man.
I think the longest 1 year, I think, was like one sort of straggly egg that stayed in there. And I think it was in there something like 90 or 100 days. I
Okay.
can't really, I think I'd given up even checking and
Hmm.
then went in one day and surprised there was a tortoise there kind of thing. Um, but yeah, they were really enjoyable. I didn't expect to want to breed tortoises.
Right.
Um, and then did it. At the time, it was all about snakes and the lizards, and I just had this group of tortoises.
Yeah.
Um, and then that year as well, we were breeding all these different snakes. I think I wish I'd been able to breed my Mollendorf rats
Hmm.
because they stayed alive a very long time
Hmm.
for very rough wild caught animals.
Yeah.
I paid next to nothing for them.
Which invariably they all were back in the day.
Yeah, and to be honest, for what came on that shipment, it wouldn't surprise me if they came out of a food market.
Right.
The prices were that kind of low. I think I paid about £30 each for
Wow.
these Mollendorfs. They were about 4 foot each, young animals sort of thing. They fed the week they arrived. They were perfect. I had them about 7 years, and then we had a heat wave one summer, and it
Yeah.
decimated. Mandarin rats, Mollendorf rats, croc skinks, all kinds of stuff just
Yeah.
dropped.
Yeah.
But they were alive and they were great for all that time. I
I love
remember
Moldovs. I love them. I
they're
absolutely love
great. And I remember, I always remember posting kind of a bit of a write up about how we'd kept them alive because they were
them.
about as fresh wild caught comes.
Mm.
And I'd put it on the real RFUK,
Mm-hmm.
the original. And I'd put on that they were quite bad tempered.
Mm.
Like they weren't aggressive, but they were
Puffy.
quite,
Yeah.
yeah, testy is what I
Mm.
used to call them. You could get
Yeah.
away with move it, clean it, done, back in you go. If you pushed it further than that, they'd bite and they'd bite quite hard.
Yeah.
And I remember someone commenting saying, if these rat snakes are being aggressive, you are keeping them incorrectly. Like it's a wild caught Asian rat snake. If it isn't biting me, it's going to the vets. It's
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
was just thinking, like, that's the attitude you need from a wild caught snake. It
Yeah.
should be defensive.
It's the
So yeah,
lethargy that's the killer. You need them to have that
yeah,
spunk
yeah,
and spark
yeah.
to get them feeding, you know?
Well, we had Mandarin rat snakes on the same shipment, and
Yeah.
they were too far gone.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even try and run away from you. They just gave up, and
Yeah.
we lost. I think we lost all of those. To be fair, So yeah, I think they're my two biggest kind of proud moments is keeping Mollendorf's alive from basically plane to Viv, and
So
then
uh, we've had the successes and maybe your favourite, but has there anything that stands out as a cock up? Something that you absolutely royally fucked up at some point during a breeding project, and then you go, because people don't understand the value added to cock ups. Like like you can have all the success in the world, but realistically, you're not learning anything. It's those cock ups that are going to teach you how to segue and change. So, is there anything that stands out as an example like that?
It's more than one.
Yeah,
It's so recently shared on the page a picture of a female leopard gecko that got a leg ripped open.
right.
It wasn't a majorly serious injury, but we shared that as a this is why we tell you don't jump into breeding, don't jump into whatever.
Yeah.
But there's been a lot of those over the years, and I think when you do it long enough, you do eventually just start ticking off. Well, we've had egg binding, or we've had this, or you breed enough animals, the odds gods go against you, kind of thing. But I think my biggest kind of, I wouldn't necessarily call it a failure, but I was frustrated it never finished. Was
Right.
Schneider's skinks.
Oh, mate, yeah.
I got eggs
I got
3 years
eggs.
running.
Couldn't hatch them. They didn't.
Nope.
No.
And I tried everything.
Yeah.
Dry sand, sand with the bottom wet, vermiculite, perlite. And it was one of those where I was like, I'm literally going to start doing blood sacrifices at this point. It's like, something's got to make these eggs, because they were fertile. The veins on those things were enormous. It was mental. And those eggs shouldn't fit in that skink. Like, because you bred, well, you got eggs off Schneider.
I got eggs off Schneider.
Yeah.
I've never hatched them, but then subsequently I've had 2 pairs of customers in Sheffield get eggs, just hatch them out, no problem. And I'm just like, are you fucking like, and they come in with these lovely stocky little babies. They're like the most beautiful little things you've ever seen, and I'm just absolutely seething inside. But proud at the same time. Seething. See, where you succeeded past me is the biggest challenge that they found was that they could get them to reproduce the first season, but they could never get them to reproduce in subsequent years after that. So they'd get the eggs the first year of cycling, they'd come, and then that was it. And we're talking over 4 or 5 years of trying to repeat this cycle or whatever the cycle was. They were actively doing the brumation, light shifts, everything to try and get it to come. So they couldn't get the subsequent eggs. So there's 3 levels of failure, of which I am at the bottom. I got 1 set of eggs that I couldn't hatch. You got 3 sets of eggs on 3 separate occasions that you couldn't hatch. And then Ryan and Rachel, the spawny bastards, got 1 that's them straight away, and they're like, "Damn you," But that's just that's the way it shakes out sometimes, isn't it?
Definitely.
You get those missed opportunities, and they don't come up. So
I think another one that springs to mind, and it reminds me of you quite a lot. When we were at T Pets, I was forced to keep and breed species. Obviously, I wasn't overly bothered for. Like dwarf Burmese pythons. Now I've bred dwarf Burmese pythons, and I don't really count it as that much of an achievement because we introduced them, they laid eggs, the babies fed. It was like raising a corn snake. They were honestly genuinely lovely snakes to work with. But it just weren't my thing. But we had a pair of false water cobras. For 9 years.
Right.
Never got an egg. Never so much as got an ejaculation out the male. It was like someone do something. And it got to, I think, 2007, and we were sort of thinning out some breeding stock, and I went, they're the first thing to go. Like, get them out the door. And he's like, no, I like them. I was like, get them gone. I am sick of it now. Because it was so frustrating. I was like, at the time I was breeding Amazons at home. I was breeding multiple species in the shop and at home as well. And it's like, but I couldn't crack these bloody things that you're meant to just stick together and they lay eggs. And then a couple of years later, you're like, we've got all these false water cobras. And I remember just thinking, well, more fool you.
Yeah. Well, it's not been plain sailing for the pair we kept back for the king phases. So the older pair are just egg machines. And then the pair that we kept back, oh Christ, their fertility's been all over the place. So it's been anything but straightforward. Anything but straight. And I don't know what I'm not like the parents and these subsequent youngsters are the same. Like they're kept the same.
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on? Like why is it not so? It's mad. I just don't get it. So
Yeah.
moving on, how are
Mhm.
things at the moment? There's a lot going in the on in the world with the cost of living, energy bills. Um, has this presented any challenges, or in the future, do you think?
I think
You think you'll get away with it, or
I think up and down is the best description of the last, maybe even the last 6 months.
yeah?
Going back to June, like when we were getting phone calls like, do you want to sign a new energy contract? Do you want to do this? This price is locked in until then. I did,
Mm.
and it made my winter bill
Yeah.
affordable because
Right.
it became a direct debit
Okay.
rather than. But through summer, it'll be twice what it should be, which is
Right.
so it'll level me off. But at least now I know what I'm paying
Hmm.
instead of getting, by the way, you owe us this much this month, and next month it'll be twice as much because you accidentally plugged that heater in that time.
Yeah.
Um, but we've definitely noticed that people aren't spending what they would on new things.
Yeah.
So new animals, new setups. We've had a lot of I'm going to buy that nice branch, or I'm going to change my substrate into
Hmm.
bioactive, or those kind of things.
Yeah.
Or we have a setup that we've been working on for a while. We just need the animal.
Yeah.
That was Christmas for me.
Mm.
Was not bad sales wise,
Yeah.
but not the sales you think you're getting. It,
Hmm.
it was someone would walk in and go, we're after a crested gecko. Do you need a setup? No. And you think, oh, how bad is this going to be? And it'd be some 45, 60 with UV and heat. You'd be like, all right, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
fine. Cool. There's your cresty, off you go.
Hmm.
Um, and it was odd. We didn't have any corner cutting,
Hmm.
which surprised me because
Yeah.
I thought we were going to start seeing like heat mat on the back wall and
Mm.
the proper 90s into early 2000s keeping coming back because people were trying to cut a corner and they'd read it once on the internet. We just didn't have it. It's we've had months where we've been surprisingly busy,
Yeah.
but not Christmas busy as it should
Hmm.
have. But then we've also had months where it's been dead and it's
Yeah.
got to the point where you sort of look at it and you think, well, if this doesn't come back,
Yeah.
when do we start going, shit, this is bad? Um, and I've sort of always been relatively lucky in that I can sort of pull it out my ass at the last minute if I need so sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been weird, and I've tried predicting what we're gonna do or where with this some so might put something on sale or might get a new line in and think, oh,
Yeah.
this is going to be quite a good seller,
Hmm.
and it flatlines.
Yeah.
Or something that you weren't bothered for, you just got it and took a picture of it for Facebook, and suddenly you sold out of it. And there's just no rhyme or reason anymore. It's
It's
really
that
difficult.
ever elusive formula that we always seem to think that like exists. This shit doesn't exist. It doesn't.
No.
Something that you will not give a second's thought to,
Mm.
like whether it's purchasing in some livestock because there's an empty viv. I need to fill it. I need a suitable animal. Okay, and then within as soon as it's available for sale and it's had its minimum amount of feeds and
Yeah.
checks, gone.
Yeah.
Or you sell it within an hour and you've got to hold it for 3 weeks till it's fed.
Yeah.
And then it goes. And then something else that you get offered and you think, oh, that's going to be amazing.
Mm.
I'm going to get that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure, Chaz. Yeah. I want all six of them. I'm going to have them all. And then
Yeah.
all six of them are still staring at me 6
Yeah.
months later. And you just
Yeah.
think, okay, that's a new, you like, and I've been trying to find that formula for 23 years, and I can't find it. Like,
No.
and that's why a lot of shop owners, I think, default to what they like.
Mm.
But rather than
Yeah.
just like, look, this is me, this is what I do.
Mm.
I like our bullshit. You like our bullshit. Come to my shop, so you'll have a good.
Yeah.
Do you know
I
what I
do
mean?
think
That's
I do think that's helped though, because like while it's been necessarily like not necessarily as reliable,
yeah,
if you're stocking what you like, you'll
yeah,
talk about it better.
yeah,
And when someone comes in and says, I'm after a fur snake, like for you, be screwy corn snake, is a black rat or an eastern rat, this rat and this king snake
yeah,
and this,
yeah,
And I'm sort of the same way. So people go, I want something like a leopard gecko. I'm like, but have you considered
yeah,
fat tail geckos, pictus geckos, this gecko?
mm,
And it might not work. They might still
yeah,
just buy the leopard gecko, but you get to talk better about
yeah,
what you enjoy. And I think in this recent period where it's all been very take your day as it comes kind of thing, I think the days where you get to have those conversations are the ones that keep it going.
Yeah.
Like if I had to sit and just go, there's your live food one day, right? Yep. Thanks for coming. There's your 5 mice. See you next week, kind of thing. I think I'd have just quit when
Yeah.
it all started getting a bit topsy turvy because I think if you can't go to work and talk about what you enjoy and all that kind of thing, I think that's why a lot of us do it. Is there is a
Yeah.
hobby under the business kind of thing.
It's always there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, as much as that with bluster, I say, right, you've got to divorce yourself from it. I'm still a snake lover, reptile.
you have to
I always
divorce
will
yourself
be.
from it. I
It's
think
in
you have
your
to divorce
bones.
yourself from it financially. Like you
Yeah.
can't pay for your own hobby kind of thing.
Yeah.
But psychologically, you're never going to get rid of the fact that, well, you've got them speckled races.
I
I
might.
saw I saw your face. Here, do you want to see this one? And that's it. And
Like a
it's
giddy kid. Look at
yeah.
it. It's amazing.
And I'm pretty sure it pissed off across the room after
Yeah.
that. But
Yeah.
but it is. I think it's when you can still keep your hobby underneath it all and think,
Yeah.
right, I've bought myself a little project or whatever. You pass that on.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of makes these weird times that we're having now. I mean, since I started working in the trade, we've had all the natural disasters that have happened. We've had COVID, that was a good one.
Oh yeah.
We've had the AAL being redone from the pet shop license. What a ball ache that was.
Mm.
Then we've had all the kind of energy crisis. Since I opened Peculiar Pets, there hasn't actually been a year that hasn't been affected by something else.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And I think I'm just so used to it now. I'm
You
just like,
sleep.
whatever.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
sleepwalk from one crisis to the
yeah,
next. Like,
yeah,
you're waiting for that 2 or 3 years of calm
yeah.
seas where, finally we can
Mhm.
maybe, I can afford something bigger than a two-bedroom terraced house after
Yeah.
25 years of work. Oh, actually, no, 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 now we're going to triple your
Yeah.
energy bill. And,
Yeah.
we're going to shut you down for 9 months during
Mhm.
COVID or whatever it was. And you just think, right, roll your sleeves up.
Yeah.
And you just have to crack on. And
It
and
is. Yeah.
and it is just one headache after another
Yeah.
sometimes.
And I think it's, in a way, I think it's part of it. I think, for me anyway, being as accident prone and disaster prone, I think my mum always says to me, she's like, write a book.
Yeah,
She's like, because you couldn't make it up a lot of the time.
yeah,
But it is, I think this kind of niche trade, because we are a niche
yeah,
trade.
absolutely.
I think we attract this kind of odd side of it where it's like you wouldn't, if you owned a chippy, you wouldn't expect someone to drive through it. But you
No,
own a reptile shop, it's like, oh well, it's July,
yeah,
and you just sort of roll with it. And I think it's because a lot of your hobby is quite unexpected and unpredictable. Like
mm,
you open a Viv and a Burmese python smacks you in the face. It's like, oh, it's Monday,
yeah.
and I think it's just
Hi,
that kind of thing. Yeah, I think it's, oh yeah, well, we tried. Get your water tomorrow.
is that Tokay still in there? Oh, there you
Yeah. Oh, look, it's red.
Oh,
Yeah, it is, and I think it breeds a kind of
yeah.
tougher kind of person out of the reptile trade a little bit.
Well, I mean, you do have to be tough, that's for sure. I mean, life away from the shop, significant others in your life. How supportive are they of this clusterfuck that is owning a reptile shop? Uh,
By significant other, do you mean Josh or just my dog?
yeah, your dog will do. Your dog will do. How supportive has the dog been of shop ownership? As it can be a real labour and
he's a
taxing on
he's an
relationships.
absolute pain in the ass, is the dog,
Right.
but I love him.
Yeah.
No, well, I met Josh as a customer. He was a
Right.
customer, and he asked me out, and that was that really.
That,
There's
how many years ago is that then?
what 12? Yeah, 12.
12. 12 years. You got in trouble then. You didn't know.
It's 12 in March.
Okay.
Yeah, so 12 years. And it was literally just a case of came in, got some bugs one night, and then rung the shop and was like, is that the dude in the check shirt? I was like, yeah. He says, oh, I've just been in for my crickets. I'm like, and in my head, I'm thinking, great, what do you want? It's like, I've just served you. Go away.
Yeah.
He's like, do you want to go for a drink sometime? I was like, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
whatever, whatever.
yeah.
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 So he was a leopard gecko. He's actually the reason I breed leopard geckos.
Okay.
I wasn't bothered. And then he started breeding them. And I was like, that's cool. I like this pattern. Maybe we could get one of these. And suddenly 2 became 70.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm never going to be rich. I get
No.
addicted to things.
So support's never been in short supply. You've always felt support
No,
during a project.
from starting at well, I was already at T-Pets then,
Yeah.
but like T-Pets through all the trials and tribulations of that, and then starting my own, it was all like, if you want to do it, do it. He gets a lot of free stuff out of it, so I think that helps.
Greases the wheels, you know.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I need a load of food for my geckos. Do you? Right, yeah, well, cough up then.
They're not free than us.
Exactly. So yeah, and then this summer when we decided the perfect idea would be to get a dog that would live in the shop with me as well.
Good decision. Good decision.
Absolutely, he
Yeah.
really was. And on those days where you really just want to curl up and cry a little bit, hugging a 35-kilo American Bulldog is a really good therapy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll consider that.
Yeah.
We have regular visits from Pixie's dogs, so
Well, yeah.
yeah, I just sort of second them. Come here, you can be my comfort blanket for an hour. You don't want your mum. You don't want your mum. Just
Yeah,
what I just keep saying. You want me? Come on, come here.
it is.
I've got
I mean,
treats in my pocket.
the dog loves every regular customer we've got. He loves
Mm.
everyone that walks through the door. He's a bit addicted to locust. That's about his only. Like, I'm like, can you? Because he doesn't eat them. He chews them and litters them around my
Oh,
shop.
nice, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, but no, he took to shop life from being 9 week old, and it was just plain sailing. But yeah,
Has any part of you ever considered walking away?
yeah. What you mean this week or like?
Yeah, today.
Yeah. Second shop at T Pets nearly did it for me. I was just like, I cannot do this anymore.
Yeah.
Then the end of T Pets going in, because hadn't necessarily settled on I might do this myself. It was just, I don't want to close this shop. I don't want to be here when this all ends, because I've been here 10 years. So I left in I think the June or July,
Okay.
and just went that way. If you want to close it, close it. I don't have to watch it, sort of thing. And that nearly did it. I was a bit like, you know what? No, I've done this too long. I've
Yeah.
been in this like 12, 13 years now. I just, and at that point I was only like 28. I was like 13 years of 28 years. And like literally my entire life has been reptiles. And now I'm 32, which makes you what, 73?
That's right. Give or take a
It's
year.
like
Yeah.
32, and you'll say to someone like, "Oh yeah, I started this 20 years ago," and they're like, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
I'm like, "No, really, I did. I was 11." And then they're like, "Yeah, but it would have been your parents." Like, no, it was, you want it, you care for it. And at 11, it was, right, Chaz, tell me these Latin names. Right, Chaz, what book is this? Can I buy this? And and at that age as well, you suck it all up, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
But it was, yeah. There's been many, many times where it's just been like, is
Okay.
Monday really worth bothering with, or do we just go screw it? And
Yeah.
now and then, like, I'll just have an afternoon where I think, just sit in the shop for a minute, think what you want to do, decide what direction you want to go, put something on offer, or just don't do it. Just
Yeah.
wait a minute, think what you're doing, and then make the decision.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when I sort of get that way out and just think this isn't worth it anymore, snap decisions
Mm.
is like the worst. Then you think, right, they're all going, everything's going,
Yeah.
put it all in the bin, all
Yeah.
of it.
Shut the lot. Done.
Yeah, it's just like everything royals the lot, and you just, I think sometimes it does take it does take a toll. Like, I don't know many people that I know through the trade that don't have to just sort of take a minute and
Yeah.
walk away, because it's you eat, sleep, and breathe it. It's I work 6 days a week. We're open Tuesday to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, I'm still in the shop. I just keep the shutter down so I can do stuff without
Yeah.
being pestered or whatever. And people are like, oh yeah, but you've got Monday off. I'm like, by the time I've done that, checked everyone, fed what needs feeding, done whatever disasters happened. If a
Yeah.
bulb's blown, a thermostat's blown, you've got to fix that. I might be there 2 hours. You go,
Yes.
oh, it's only 2 hours. Like, it is. That's 2 hours that I then have to travel home from. And then when I get home, there'll be 47 messages from someone whose bearded dragon's head's fallen off.
Yeah.
And it's never really ending.
And when you haven't answered them in 30 seconds, question mark, question mark, question mark, because that obviously doesn't irritate the shop owner who's just done a 12-hour day and has sat down to eat cold tea because he was late in because his missus made it an hour ago, but somebody's beardy's head had fallen off. So you had to fix it back on before you could come home. And then you get in question marks after 10 minutes and you think, well, actually, you know, I kind of just maybe, if it's okay, wanted to spend 2 hours with my wife watching a film. If you know, if it's not too much problem, you know, it's insane.
I mean,
you're on it 24 hours a day.
Yeah,
and you want to go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it, and then you're doing it. It's insane.
When we sort of started at Peculiar Pets, Josh likes holidays. It's always been a thing, likes going away. And the kind of agreement was, I won't make you sacrifice that. As long as you get, I can't just at the drop of a hat go.
Disappear.
It's got to be a year's sort of thing. So that's why we go away. Like we did New York, we did that, and it's all planned usually a good year in advance, so that I can go, right, breeding season needs to happen before then because someone else is looking after the shop. And the amount of people when we were in New York who messaged me, and it's like, don't get me wrong, some of them didn't know when I was away. That's fine. Obviously, can't fault that. It's, you sent a message, but some of them did.
Yes,
and you just think, you know, I'm going to answer this, and you know that I'm 7 hours behind or whatever it is, and you've still done it, and you could have Googled that, or you could have rung someone else, or, you know, it's little things like that where you sort of, like you said earlier about the give and take, it's a little bit into that kind of, well, you're on tap, you're going to answer me no matter what.
You're my bit. Answer my question. And it's like, where? When did I missed that you know, that memo where suddenly I'm at your beholden 24. What the fuck? You know? So the hobby faces a myriad of threats and challenges. How do you think the hobby can best adapt to navigate this?
The hobby.
And do you think the hobby is well represented?
No. And I don't think the hobby, a bit of a limit here, I don't think the hobby exists as one thing. Because you've got the trade.
Yeah.
You've then got parts of the trade who aren't part of the trade, like the bubble kind of thing. Like recently, to me at least, there seems to be a very wholesaler, retailer kind of split. And then there's breeder, retailer split. And then there's the show. And everyone else kind of split. And then there's little Timmy with his 18 leopard gecko. You go for your life, kid. That's great. But then there's hobby breeder who's driving a brand new car that they paid for with high-end Royal Pythons, or I don't think there is a hobby at the minute. I think there's sectors, and I think they're starting to move together. And I think that will probably be the thing that does help it, is to be represented. You have to have an ideal, like something that you all agree on needs to do. And they're all under the same attack, and that's what I've never really understood, is they're all under the same attack by the same idiots saying that 90% of reptiles die in the first year. But they can't agree on whether sand causes impaction or not, to notice that something big is going on. And it's sometimes like, take the blinkers off and realize the world is happening around you beyond your leopard gecko and its 40-gallon breeder kind of thing.
Yeah, they can have their macro view. And you know, you're okay to have that macro view, but realize that there is a macro situation going on apart from your micro. And as much as you want to war about desert sand for beer, or rack systems for royals, you see all of these organizations with the likes of Toland and Warwick and everybody else coming to bear, and we've seen that recently with Scotland. That this proposed whitelist and all the rest of it, and you think you lot need to get your heads out of your ass, because you're not safe. This whitelist shit, if it comes to bear, it doesn't matter what style of care you provide. You could be the most advanced dude ever. I'm like PhD, blah blah blah. Done that, read this. I know him. You know, Marcus Shake's my best friend. Blah blah. And all that. It doesn't fucking matter, bro. Because you could be the best keeper on earth. If it ain't on the list, you ain't getting in. And that's the way it is.
And I think there is like an invincibility
Yeah.
to the sort of I think like the general keeper
Yeah.
thinks, oh, they'll never do that, really, because
Mhm.
Florida said something similar,
Yeah.
and the retic keepers said something similar,
Mm.
and look how well that went. And a lot of them sat back and watched it, not thinking it would happen, while
Yeah.
people worked hard for it. I mean, I don't overly support the IHS,
Hmm.
um, especially the shows,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't publicly write down why, in
Yeah.
case that, just like anything else where you're slagging off someone else's husbandry or whatever,
Yeah.
can easily be lifted and then misconstrued and then turned
Absolutely.
against you.
Yeah.
In this kind of like sand kills leopard geckos.
Mm.
Well, that takes one idiot from the APA or whatever to turn that around and go, pet trade sells sand, which inherently kills geckos.
Yeah. They're killing
There you
their own
go.
animals.
They're killing their own animals.
And
Yeah, through
90% of them
ignorance.
die in the first year anyway.
Yeah.
And
And
another
I just
might
think
spawn.
if you're gonna, I think if you're gonna put that many bullets in the gun for your own community,
Yeah.
I think you have to question why, kind of like why you've not done anything earlier,
Mm.
kind of thing. Um, yeah, I don't think there is a hobby as a whole. I really don't, and I've felt like this for a lot of years. I think there is a trade and there's a community there, and then there's the sort of outliers to that, and then you've got breeders, but then there's breeders that no one likes, or there's breeders that are their own thing. And I
You
think
think the
really it's
factions
all,
will kill the hobby? Like, if the factions can't
yeah,
yield, they'll kill the hobby.
yeah. I think if there isn't kind of one thing, and I know the FBH is kind of meant to provide that, but it doesn't.
Mm.
Um, and the IHS doesn't, and SRAS doesn't. And I know all these kind of things are kind of community portals almost, but they don't do what they're meant to do. Because if you, there's no kind of like unifying
Mm.
thing. I can't really think of it, like a unifying kind of message or
Yeah.
mission kind of thing.
Yes.
It's like we want to improve this, or we want reptile keepers to agree a baseline, or
Mm.
it's all no, we want you to keep it in a 19-foot walking enclosure, or no, we want you to put it in a rack, or if it's not a morph, it's not worth talking about. And you've just got all these tribes continually talking.
Yeah.
I don't think they realize that really what they are all kind of aiming for is the same,
Mm.
but they can't sort of put aside
No.
the major differences in care, preference, whatever, to
Some of these
kind of
some of
go,
these factions and ravines have existed for 20 years, and
mm,
they get deeper and wider. They don't come closer together. And at some point, they have got to find the commonality. They will
mm,
never agree on the husbandry.
no, no,
Okay, let's put that to bed. We're never going to agree on
yeah,
husbandry. But unless we can agree on a course of action to be able to fight the antis,
mm,
we're fucked. We can't keep anymore. And that's whether I've got them in a 33-litre rub or a walk-in enclosure. It makes
yeah,
no difference. And I think, I mean, I feel for Sid James at the FBH, who is a really active um, contributor to the reports and things that are put together.
mm,
And I think that his hands are somewhat tied. He's a full-time statistician. And I've kind of had my own experience of what he goes through doing the energy report, which I did for the shops, which is
yeah,
you're doing a full-time job. And then you're having to sacrifice this really precious time to put a report together to help others. And I know that they've got failings. And I think if you asked Sid if they've got failings, he would absolutely agree. He'd
mm,
concur. And he knows this shit we really haven't got together and that
yeah,
we're not doing well and that we're really not. But I know this because I was messaging him 48 hours ago saying something along those very
yeah,
lines. But like equally, it can be a thankless task.
mm,
I know what he's sacrificing. He's the chief report writer. Well, he's not chief. He's the only report writer
yeah,
for the rebuttal to Scotland.
mm,
People will have an opinion and tell them whether they like this bit or that bit, but they're not writing the 5,000-word rebuttal. That's
mm,
Sid doing that in his
yeah,
own
yeah,
time as a volunteer. And it's important to, I'm not defending necessarily the FBH reps or anyone. It's not my job. And that's
yeah,
not what I'm here for.
mm,
But to offer parity maybe is to say, I know Sid's doing the best he can with the tools he has available, and he isn't always
Yeah.
given those extra pair of hands that would be really fucking useful when it comes
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
using a 50-page document. You know what I mean? It'd be nice to have a bit of other contributors going on as
yeah.
well. And I regularly hear the rebuttals, we're all volunteers and blah blah blah. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. I'm a volunteer. Wrote a Repta report in 40 days that was
Yeah,
12,000 words and 85 pages long. I know all too well about being a volunteer. So,
yeah, yeah,
I'll tell you what, we'll compare 85-page reports and see where we go, you know? But I think that'll be the only one there.
yeah.
Like, so that,
It is. It's not me saying like, oh, the FPH doesn't do anything or the IHS doesn't do anything or anything like
yeah,
that. But I think
their
being in a shop,
communication skills suck dicks. Like
well,
they
yeah,
need to get their shit together. Social media is king. And whilst ever they are not engaging, producing content, doing this
yeah,
stuff, they will fall by the wayside. They will not gain traction.
yeah.
It just won't.
I mean, it's even goes as far as things like DEFRA. It's like when the AAL launched, I knew more about it than my council did because I'd got it through, I think, Chris Newman.
Yeah, he
But
set
the
up that
council
group, didn't he?
hadn't,
12 us all. Yeah,
yeah, the council weren't even given the start off documents to do my inspection with. So she's like, well, what do we do with this? I was like, well, that bit there says you do that. I've had this a week. I'm
yeah,
not an expert, it's
yeah,
your job. And yeah, I think that's a big problem in this trade is there isn't kind of a trickle down effect of information. It's something gets leaked through it. We
yeah.
then go, shit, we've got to sort this out. And then something official gets released as well. It's a bit strange.
Yeah, for me, I think it's that disconnect that's like, well, what you're doing, we're busy.
Mm.
Um, do you mind possibly telling me what you're busy doing? And
Yeah.
like, speaking for the 8.8 million reptile owners or whatever it is around the UK, we kind of like to know if it's not too much trouble.
Yeah.
And shop owners have got exactly the same complaint, with regards to Reptile, because
Yeah.
they're our representatives, and
Yeah.
I'm working with Chris now to try and change that because with all the will in the world, he's absolutely pulled out with it at the National Centre for Reptile Welfare because this energy crisis is crippling the centre as it is with everybody else with surrendered animals. There's only so much the man can do. He's one guy. So I've stepped in to try and help him, but I'm not like an apologist for Reptile. There's stuff that needs to change and communication. Top of that pile is the communication skill set. And shops like in the shop owners group that we've got, it's like, who's Repta? We got that
Yeah.
number of
Yeah.
shop owners, and it's like,
Yeah, that
yeah,
is definitely a vibe sometimes where you're like, oh, Reptor have done this, and they're like, great. You don't know who we're on about, do you?
I've got a clue. They're just staring at you with a blank
Yeah,
blank expression. Please tell me what that means.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't know. So
yeah.
well, I think we've done about 2 hours. I think that's probably long enough, darling. For the first episode, I really want to thank you for coming on because I've really enjoyed the chat. And there was
Yeah, it's been
elements in
really
there,
good.
even though we know each other really well. There's been stuff that I've heard that I didn't know. The detail about the flood, the detail about the damage, all that sort of gear. It offers insight, and shop owners, we're people, we're humans, we got feelings, we do everything else, and hopefully we've made a salient case for more episodes, so hopefully it's not been too terrible and people want to come back on.
Yeah, if you
So,
if you never do another one, I'm really sorry.
we'll see what happens. I'll just get you on again next week. We'll just have another, we'll just punish it.
I'll have had a fire and a tornado by then,
But
so
absolutely, yeah, just line up the next natural disaster. Absolutely. So,
definitely.
to finish off, thanks for watching, guys. If you would like to watch more videos, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can also like and share on Facebook. We'll be back hopefully in around a fortnight with our next shop owner. But from me and from Jordan, it is goodbye. Cheers, guys.